So Valinor and the Valar are both in the west, and the elves and the men, they're kind of trying to get over there all the time. And then, of course, you've got Bilbo and Frodo both beginning their stories in the cuddly towns of the north and west of Middle-earth in the Shire, and then moving off to the dangerous lands of the east. Now, does that mean that the east is evil, and is that because Mordor is out in the east? And then I'm going to just briefly talk about also, is it allegorical? Hello, I am Gone with Gandalf, and I make Lord of the Rings videos, and I try and make one of these kinds of videos once per week, and otherwise I just do divide and conquer videos. So if you like that kind of thing, then stick around. So then, to the first point, is the East evil because Mordor is there, or Mordor? If you've ever heard J.R.R. Tolkien speak about Mordor, he really rolls the R's, so get your R's on. Anyway, well, originally the bad places, or the evil places, were up in the north, and they're kind of sunk below the waves now, so we don't really have to worry about it in the Third Age. But in the First Age, there was Utumno and there was Angband, and this is where Sauron's boss, essentially, Melkor, later known as Morgoth, that is where he did all his dastardly deeds. But actually, it's not really that far away from the good places that you might think about. So like the northern Ered Luin, the Blue Mountains, which kind of border Lindon, where the elves dwell and where the Grey Havens are. If you go right to the northern marches of that, or northern slopes, you'll actually kind of border where Angband would have been. So, you know, just because it's there doesn't make everything in its vicinity evil. But of course, Sauron moved his Tushy from Angband all the way down to Mordor. And why was this? And why was he even allowed to do this? Well, after the War of Wrath, actually, Sauron was told by Eonwe, who was the Herald of Manwë. He kind of led the forces of the West against Morgoth, and he was the mightiest of the Maiar in combat, and in fact of everyone. But Eonwe actually told Sauron, look, you need to come back to Valinor, and you can then seek your judgment there from the Valar, and then, you know, we'll see, we'll take it from there. But Sauron didn't really like the sound of that kind of punishment, and he was a bit scared. He was like going to the head teacher's office back in like primary school. You didn't really know what to expect, and it can be a bit scary, not speaking from experience at all. So he was about to go, but then didn't. He moped around for about 500 years, then about 500 years into the Second Age, he eventually found himself in Mordor. And Mordor was picked due to a couple of reasons, actually. So if we just think about the geography of Middle-earth and where Sauron then situated himself out in the east, it's mainly because Gil-Galad was the High King of the Noldor elves in exile up in Lindon. So that's quite far away. So that's a good thing, because obviously they're quite powerful. And he held a lot of sway in Middle-earth at that time. Now, it's not just the elves, of course. Now you've got the Númenóreans, and they don't really like orcs and Sauron either, because their forefathers fought against him and Morgoth as well. And they were really solid sailors, shall we say, and they were the dominant naval power in all of Middle-earth. And to be like situated too close to the sea, that would be a very bad thing. So he picked Mordor because, you know, you've got a nice mountainous terrain around it. It's quite difficult to get in. So that is why, presumably, why he set up shop there. So then on to the second point. If the East wasn't evil because it's the East, then why is everyone moving west? Well, of course, the elves, they were actually invited by the Valar, the powers of the world. They were invited because they saw the damage that Melkor was doing to the world, to Arda. That they were like, come and join us, like, you're the firstborn, you're special. So, you know, do you want to come and join us in the Undying Lands? So a lot of them were like, oh, well, of course. And that's what they did. So this then led later on, with the rising of the sun, you had the rising of the first men in Hildorian, also out in the east. Now, they didn't get the escort of Orome, one of the Valar, to go over to Valinor. No, but they heard rumour of the Valar and the majesty of the West. So some of them did actually make the westward journey, but they only got this kind of fractured story from the Avari and some of the Sylvan elves along the way. The men, they mostly journeyed westwards because they wanted to actually perhaps meet these godly characters and whatnot, come to these fair realms that they had heard of. And secondly, they had a lot of internal struggle, internal wars. They had some kind of persecution. We don't really know, but Finrod Felagund, if I can just say that, Finrod Felagund, he actually found the men, the Atani, the second born or second coming, I can't remember, the Atani anyway, and in the lands of Osiriand or Osiriand. The pronunciation is killing me. But he actually came among them and spoke to Beor, the leader of the House of Beor. They were the first peoples, or the first men to come into Beleriand. And it was really, that's kind of all we really know of what happened over there. And that was a few hundred years after their coming into the world. So I suppose that does kind of make the East evil in that regard, but it's not because it is the East, it's just because, you know, as we all know, humans can always find a reason to fight one another. So if I then just divert back to why Sauron picked Mordor, of course with Gil-Galad up in the north and the west, and then you've got the Númenóreans like far out in the sea and generally just on the coasts, you know, that kind of positions him quite nicely then to go eastward, speak to all these different men that have no contact with the forces of the West or many of the elves at all, and he can, you know, corrupt them, do with them, bring them into to join his cause, and that's of course what he did do. So it's not evil because it's in the East, it's evil because Sauron is there and he is causing them to, well, he's just stirring the pot, isn't he? He's a bad boy. He should have gone to the head teacher's office over in the West. And so on to the final point then. Let's not make this video longer than it needs to be. Is the story allegorical? And is so I'm just going to get the actual definition of allegory for you folks that aren't literature fans. So, allegory, a story, poem or picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or a political one. Well, I'll answer that very easily. No, it's not allegory. Tolkien did not like allegory. If you go online and you type in like map of Middle-earth, like superimposed onto a real world like atlas or something, you can often see, you know, like the journey of Frodo like on the map of the United States, and then often then people might look at the East and the West, like Mordor, is that meant to be like Soviet Russia or something like that? Because, you know, they're generally, having been seen in the last century, certainly they were seen as the big enemy to the West. Actually, Tolkien, he came up with Middle-earth a very, very long time before World War II certainly occurred. But he was, of course, involved in the First World War. But his first ideas of Middle-earth, particularly the story of Beren and Luthien, that came about in 1917 when he actually married his wife Edith. And if I'm not mistaken, also the fall of Gondolin, what came about during that time as well. So Middle-earth has certainly been in his consciousness way before, well, that was obviously predating, well, that was around the time of the Bolshevik Revolution. But even at that time, he would have had, if there was allegory, then in 1916, 1917, the East wasn't the enemy, it was Germany. Finally, allegory does not exist in any of Tolkien's works. The East is not evil, due to it being like Soviet Russia or just the Russians or the Nazis, nothing like that. It's just because Sauron decided to set up his realm down there, away from all the more powerful good guys of the West. Okay, well, I hope that this video has been enjoyable somewhat. Leave a comment if there's anything that you want to add to the discussion. We can type some things down there like you guys have done in previous videos. Yeah, next week then I'm going to talk about Sauron and how did he lose the One Ring to Isildur? Like, how did he just let him cut the ring off his finger if he was so powerful? So I hope you join me for that one. That'll be in a week's time, most likely. And if you like this kind of content, do like the video because it lets me know that they're worth doing. And subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time then, I'm Game with Gandalf. Good day.